Hello, Warrior Cats community! Good news! I'm not dead. I'm just really lazy and too distracted with college to get any actual animations done, so sorry about the inactivity. But that's probably not why you're watching this. Me, as the wildlife ecology major I am, is here to spread the good news that there is no realistic, biologically possible way that warrior cats can take place in England, according to the wildlife shown in text. Your favorite cats are not British. Now you may be saying, Jester, what in the name of all StarClan and Kitty Hell do you mean that it can't be England? Didn't the Aarons originally base it on a location near them in England? Well, that is correct, and it may be the inspiration for the layout of the first map itself. If you go through the actual content of the book, there are a huge amount of blatant contradictions to the wildlife and flora of the regions that the Aarons clearly did not research much about beforehand. It's basically just a smorgasbord of different, mostly American types of wildlife from all random different ecosystems for some reason. The most obvious off the bat flag that something isn't right here that a lot of people catch on to is that in this quote unquote English wilderness, there's an entire mountain lion that's just never talked about or explained, or it's just a mountain lion. If there's seemingly a common North American predator as a major plot point in the series, warrior cats can't take place in England. They just can't. They're not native to England. Warrior Cats takes place in North America. You can probably see where I'm going with this, but that point in mind, I used my own knowledge plus additional lists of creatures and plants on the Warrior Cats wiki to overlap the prominent species of wildlife and plants in the books. In theory, the ecosystem presented in the books doesn't seem too outlandish to be non-functional, so I wanted to see if there was any current region in North America that mirrors this territory even in the slightest. Okay, starting here, I am so sorry. I'm about to overlap a bunch of maps and stuff and spit out random wildlife stuff. So if you don't want to listen to me recreate early 2000s Animal Planet, feel free to skip. You're fine. To start, we try and overlap our listed predators and prey species to the native territory ranges first. Animals that have more localized ranges, such as the North American water vole, were checked first to get a narrow window of where to look, and then I moved on to making sure that I could fit the big predators, such as North American badgers, mountain lions, red fox, and hares in that area. Vague animals such as eagles, snakes, and hawk were left untouched because I don't have a definitive species list anywhere in the book, and you can just find them anywhere in North America, so that shouldn't be much of an issue to fit in. Going on to fish. Here's where it gets funny. Looking into the types of fish listed in the book, you can really tell how under-researched the setting is, because not a single one is native to freshwater Europe like they claim. Unsurprisingly, they really didn't pay much attention to RiverClan even before the plot was made. Moving on, our main species of fish listed in the book are minnow, pike, and chub, which are freshwater fish primarily native to the New English and Canada area around the Great Lakes, while trout is native to northwestern United States and Russia primarily. Neither of which is England. It's a lot harder to overlap these fish species territories because it's kind of vague on what type of fish we're looking at. Just makes it more clear that the Irish just threw down a bunch of random fish names they found on Wikipedia or something, without even considering that the majority of them don't even interact in the wild and never will. So I gave myself a little bit more leniency here. A lot of bodies of water also have invasive fish species, so I think for the sake of my own sanity, I decided if I wanted an actual answer, I would just have to say screw this. They're invasive. They can be invasive. They're invasive species. That's my excuse. At least they're in the United States, and that's good enough for me. And now, so moving on from animals, I'm about to absolutely lose my mind talking about the Flora situation. There was so little thought put into this. As expected, the herbs and other plants are literally just absolutely randomized combination from all around the globe. I couldn't find one non-native plant species in the books that hadn't made its way to the US, and a larger amount than I expected were local to the United States, so at least most of the plants line up with that. As much as I didn't want to rely on the invasive species card again for this, to get a definitive area, it's going to have to be our main resort. Invasive species are extremely prevalent in our current wildlife, so I guess it would be biologically inaccurate, as well as bring me to a complete stump if half these completely random Siberian plants or whatever were limited to only, like, northeastern Russia or something stupid like that, and I would cry. My goal here was to at least make sure there are actual invasive species in the United States that got spread over a reasonable amount of ground in order for it to count, which a lot of them did. Since we know there's a lot of farming right next to the clan territories, I'm using that excuse that the smaller subspecies come from farmers or something, because my determination to put at least some set of logic into these kitty books are more important than these plants staying in their own house, and I don't care. Now that we have all the information laid out the best we can, and we know all of our players and territories to work with, I'm convinced more than not that Warrior Cats takes place in the northwestern United States. To specify, our location most likely be around the Oregon/Washington border. At least, it's way more probable than England. Not only does a majority of the wildlife line up, there are lots of prominent lakes and streams to fit with the territories, lots of mountains, areas known specifically for farming, a few railways for things like Tiger Star's Super Edition, and if you take note, them being on the west coast would also provide the perfect location for our quote-unquote sun-drowned place, which makes traveling to the ocean where the sun sets seem not as impossible if they're already at the west coast. As an additional note, an abandoned mine in this area would also be decently believable due to the amount of abandoned mines from early colonization, so there's our moonstone. All in all, though, I did my best and lost a few brain cells, but we did it. Your favorite cats aren't British. They're from the northwestern United States, most likely. Of course, there are plenty of smaller contradictions from, the little subspecies, but it's way more probable than Europe, so you're welcome.